It's your ex-husband's funeral, and you're the chief mourner. Get here right now.
Right. Everyone's waiting.
Receiving a call from an unregistered number, I answered with suspicion, only to hear my ex-mail start with something outrageous. My ex Phil was next to my ex Mill, and I braced myself for something. What's going on all of a sudden?
Well, it's because John has died. You owe him, don't you? It's only natural for you to be the chief mourner.
Am I the chief mourner? I had a headache because what they said was incoherent. But I attended John's funeral last year.
What?
Why would they be surprised? I had been informed about John's passing around a year ago and had attended the funeral. It seems in-laws probably didn't realize I was there.
What do you mean?
I could hear the tremble in my father-in-law's voice. Taking a breath, I said, well, and began to recount my attendance at John's funeral. My name is Sharon Anderson. I am 41 years old and work as a nurse. My 3-year-old daughter, April, has been picking up new words at daycare and talks to me like a little lady. She's at such an adorable age, and I'm ready to do anything, from work to household chores, for her. The truth is, I got married and divorced 3 years ago, so I am a single mother. My ex-husband's name was John Harris, a taxi driver who was 4 years older than me. When we first met, John was a gentleman, and although I was in my mid-30s, I found myself very interested in him. My income was higher than his, but I was so addicted to love with John at the time that I didn't even care. I thought we would continue to live happily ever after. I never doubted it until we split up. I want to explain, step by step, why I ended up divorcing John. I met John at a singles event that was held regularly. Engrossed in my work, I had missed the so-called right age to marry and started feeling lonely about spending my life alone. At 36, I thought my chances of getting married were slim, but nothing would start without action. So, I attended the mixer my friend recommended. It was a big city mixer, with roughly 100 men and women participating. It was targeted at women in their 30s and men from their 30s to 50s, so I was relieved I didn't have to compete with women in their 20s. However, as a 36-year-old, I felt disheartened as men seemed to prefer women in their early 30s. Then, by chance, I ended up at the same table as John, who struck up a conversation.
Do you feel a bit out of place? Would you like to talk more privately over there?
Yes, I felt the same way. John found a way into my heart and created time for us to talk alone. Moreover, he was quite a handsome man, and I guessed he must have been very popular when he was younger. He was a taxi driver by profession. I don't care about the income of the marriage partner, but some women will care about it. I thought that was part of the reason why the good-looking John was a single man.
It's my first time at an event like this. I didn't know how to behave. It took a lot of courage to talk to someone as beautiful as you.
Thank you. My face immediately turned red at the compliment. Honestly, I'm not the type who is often called beautiful, so I realized right away that John was just flattering me. Still, I was really happy to be complimented. Afterward, we gradually hit it off, talking about hobbies and how we spend our weekends, and by the end of the mixer, we had become quite comfortable with each other. John and I exchanged contacts, and we went on several dates afterward. He was a grown man, so I thought he would go out for a nice meal on a date, but he took me to the movies and the aquarium in response to my request. If I didn't think about income, he was the perfect marriage partner. As we continued to date him, I became very interested in John and genuinely fell in love with him. I never imagined that at 36, I would once again experience those bittersweet feelings of love. But I believed love was essential for marriage, so I took the initiative and proposed to John. He was surprised by my confession but quickly smiled and said, "We'll start a serious relationship." Our serious relationship began, and given our ages, John proposed relatively soon after. I was delighted and immediately said yes. I was grateful and happy that he chose someone like me, who was not young anymore. When we started our married life, we were blessed with a child in just 6 months, which was a surprise to me. Many of my friends who got married in their 30s struggled to conceive, and I had almost given up on the idea of having children. But getting pregnant so easily was both a shock and a joy. I immediately told John about the pregnancy. Then John, looking completely astonished, widened his eyes as if he had never expected the news.
Sharon, is that true?
Yes, I had it confirmed at the hospital.
Really?
John quietly looked down. Is there anything wrong with him? But the next moment, he returned to his usual smiling self, saying, "That's great." I was completely reassured then, unaware that the situation was rapidly changing. Once my pregnancy began, I was constantly in poor health throughout the period. Some pregnant women travel or go to spas during their stable period, but I felt too ill to be active. I had severe morning sickness, couldn't do any housework, and even in the stable period, I felt lethargic. I had trouble talking with John and couldn't eat. Even when John asked me if I was okay, all I could muster was a vague yes, well. In response, perhaps giving up on conversing with me, John began to leave me alone during my pregnancy, which put more distance between us. Despite the loneliness, I believed that once the baby arrived, we would return to the joyful family life we had. 8 months later, I gave birth to a healthy girl. I named her April. Her chubby cheeks were endearing, and I felt my efforts in childbirth were worthwhile. John couldn't be present at the birth due to his work and didn't show up at the hospital either. All my calls were met with, "I've been really busy with work," and I couldn't argue with that. He never visited, and my hospital stay ended. I had to take a taxi home alone with April. Looking at the taxi driver's back, I wondered if John was out driving too. As I entered our home, saying "I'm back," I was startled to see unfamiliar women's bag on the table. What was going on? Before I could think further, I was shocked by the sounds of a man and woman from the bedroom. I approached the bedroom frighteningly and slowly to see what was going on inside. "What are you doing?" As I held April in my arms, I saw John hugging a woman 20 years younger than himself.
What the hell?
The naked woman turned around in surprise at my voice. John also looked at me with a surprise.
Sharon, you got discharged today. I didn't know.
John tried to act normal, but it was too ridiculous. "I told you yesterday."
Oh, I forgot. Sorry. I'm this kind of guy, so we're breaking up.
Perhaps feeling it was tiresome to be blamed, and since his affair was already exposed, John hastily initiated the breakup, which made me feel nauseous. Why, just after the birth of our child? I had no time to fall apart, questioning the situation.
As it is, please break up with him immediately.
The woman, showing no sign of discomfort in front of the wife of her affair partner, coldly suggested the separation. I was too shocked to respond. Finding out that John had already prepared the divorce papers added to the hurt and anger. He had planned to divorce me from the start. He was having an affair and enjoying himself, neglecting his wife who was suffering from poor health due to the pregnancy. When I imagined that he was cheating on me during my delivery, my spine went cold.
It's your fault. I married you at 36 because I didn't want kids, and yet you got pregnant so easily.
John cursed me in a tone I had never heard before. I cried as I signed the divorce papers. My baby, April, started crying, and I was flustered. John coldly remarked, baby is really noisy, sending a chilling look. After a nightmarish day, I staggered to submit the divorce papers. The situation unfolded so tumultuously that I couldn't keep up. I informed my parents and stayed with them for a while, as they were furious. My parents were ready to confront John with great fury, but I refused to allow it. Punishing him wouldn't heal my wounds and could lead to more resentment. If John resents me, it would only hurt me more. When I appealed to my parents, they reluctantly backed off. After that, with my parents' help, I raised my daughter April and was able to return to work once things settled down. As April was about to turn 2, and I was recovering from the divorce, balancing work and motherhood, an unexpected event occurred. The incident occurred on a Sunday afternoon. My parents, suggesting take some time to relax alone, had taken April out with them, leaving me to enjoy some peaceful time watching TV at my parents' home. The intercom rang, and I thought it was delivery, so I opened the front door. "Oh, it's you." I was speechless upon seeing the person standing there, someone I recognized. She was a young woman in her mid-20s, tall and slender with an attractive figure. She had flashy nails and makeup. Yet, she was strikingly beautiful, the kind to turn heads when passing by. I recognized her as the woman from John's bedroom. But why was she at my parents' house now? My mind was full of question marks and I was speechless.
Hello, it's been a while. I'm Hilda Harris. To cut to the chase, my husband, John, passed away recently. There is a funeral tomorrow, and you need to attend. Otherwise, your daughter's life will be at risk.
A woman named Hilda gave me a glaring look when she spoke plainly. Her eyes were like those of an enemy, and I felt fear towards this much younger woman. Above all, the threat that your daughter's life is at risk sent a chill down my spine. Is it true that John has died?
Yes, it was a sudden accident. He died instantly.
Hilda's emotionless response to her husband's death made me wonder if she lacked any human empathy. Well, why should I attend his funeral? You and John betrayed me. I don't want to speak ill of the deceased, but I don't think I have any obligation to attend his funeral. Even though I was terrified, I firmly stated this to Hilda. Then, Hilda's previously stoic face suddenly twisted grotesquely, taking on a terrifying expression. Reflexively, I let out a scream.
What a mess. If you don't come to the funeral, your daughter's life is at risk. Don't make me say it over and over.
I shrunk to her low voice as if she were crawling on the bottom of the earth. Her drastic change and the words, "your daughter's life," took on a chilling reality. I realized that if I didn't comply, April could indeed be in danger. Especially since this woman knew where my parents lived and could easily target my young daughter. To protect April, I inquired about the location of John's funeral.
Please bring some cash for the funeral.
Hilda repeatedly emphasized bringing funeral expenses, and once her message was delivered, she left my home. I was paralyzed with fear for a while, slumped in the entranceway. Later, my parents and April returned. Seeing me in a daze at the entrance, my mother asked what happened. I only told them that Hilda had come to our house to inform us of John's death. I did not mention being threatened using April as leverage or being told to attend the funeral. The following night, after work, I went to John's funeral. I told my parents I was going out to dine with a friend from my student days, left April with them, and left home in casual clothes, changing into funeral attire at the venue. When I registered at the reception, Hilda looked at me expressionlessly. I just gave a slight bow and proceeded to attend the funeral. Seeing my in-laws for the first time in a while, they looked much thinner than when John and I had divorced. I had limited interactions with them, only during marriage introductions and Christmas holidays gatherings. Both were quite talkative, and John had preferred not to have me meet them often, probably to avoid any complications. At the end of the funeral, I greeted in front of my ex-in-laws. Still, they seemed to have forgotten me, showing no particular reaction to their former deal attending their son's funeral, merely returning the greeting as they did with everyone else. It appeared they truly did not recognize me. Feeling no need to assert my presence, I quickly returned home once the funeral was over. A year after John's funeral, April turned 3. It marked 3 years since I had separated from John. I started living alone with April after John's funeral. I felt it was unfair to burden my parents further, and I was also afraid that Hilda might unexpectedly show up at my parents' house again. Since starting to live alone with April, our life had been peaceful, but one day, an unknown number called my smartphone. It was after picking up April on my way home from work as usual. April was sleeping in her room while I was preparing dinner. I didn't know the phone number, so I hesitated whether to answer, but I pressed the call button and pressed the smartphone to my ear. "Hello?" I spoke softly, gauging the caller's intent. Then, from the other end of the phone, I heard the caller's harsh concern, which struck me as odd.
It's your ex-husband's funeral, and you're the chief mourner. Get here right now.
Yes, come on. Everyone's waiting.
The callers were John's parents, and my ex Mill started with an outrageous demand. My ex Phil was next to my ex Mill, and I braced myself for something. What's going on all of a sudden?
Because John has died, you were involved with him. You should naturally be the chief mourner. Oh, and make sure you bring some cash for the funeral.
Am I the chief mourner? I had a headache because what they said was incoherent. But I attended John's funeral last year. As I responded with disbelief, my in-laws exclaimed incredulously, "What? What could be so surprising?" I had received notification about John's death about a year ago and even attended his funeral. Probably, my in-laws hadn't realized I was there.
What do you mean?
I could hear the trembling in my ex-father-in-law's voice. Taking a breath, I said, "Well," and began to recount my attendance at John's funeral. A year ago, Hilda suddenly showed up at my parents' house and told me to attend John's funeral, threatening my daughter's life if I didn't comply. She also insisted on bringing some cash for the funeral, just like you are now. I calmly narrated the events of the past year to them. On the other end of the line, I heard 2 people gasp.
What are you talking about? That woman did what? Can we meet you in person right now?
Excuse me? The in-laws asked me, their voices tinged with desperation. Right now? Well, April is sleeping at home, so if it's at my house, that would be okay. I didn't want to get involved, but considering the unpredictable behavior of my in-laws and Hilda, I reluctantly agreed.
All right, I'll come now. Please give me your address.
After telling my in-laws my home address, they arrived in about 30 minutes.
I'm sorry to disturb you so suddenly.
My ex-in-laws entered the room without hesitation. I was so taken aback by their behavior that I forgot to serve them tea.
We want to know everything. What did Hilda tell you?
It seemed my ex-in-laws had a harsh view of Hilda. Every time her name was mentioned, their faces contorted with disdain. As I said earlier, I was threatened by Hilda and attended John's funeral. I even greeted you, but you didn't notice me.
What a thing to say.
My ex-mother-in-law's body trembled.
That woman, she stole everything valuable from our house and ran away. We ended up paying for the funeral expenses ourselves.
Her eyes blazed with anger. I see, that's happened. Hilda also took away all of my ex-husband's savings, which should have been used for funeral expenses. So my troubled ex-in-laws were trying to get money from me by making up John's funeral, which was supposed to have already finished. If I brought the cash to John's funeral, they planned to take it and run. From what I heard, they were really terrible, but my ex-in-laws kept talking as if they were the victims.
Hilda claimed she married John because he deceived her into believing he was the CEO. She lashed out at us. But the truth is, she's a big spender and has accumulated a lot of debt. We ended up being her debt guarantors, and now it looks like we'll have to pay off her debts. She's truly despicable.
They expressed their frustration with twisted faces. My ex-mother-in-law claimed she had always opposed the remarriage to Hilda and even suggested that Hilda might have orchestrated John's death for insurance money. My ex-in-laws had a pretty bad reputation for Hilda. As an outsider, I felt like covering my ears for their terrible words. I was also worried that April might wake up due to their loud voices. Ultimately, despite their outrage at Hilda, they still tried to deceive me with a fake funeral story to ask for money. They never apologized when John cheated and we divorced. They were filled with anger at Hilda, ignoring what they had done. I was on the verge of exploding with the anger welling up inside me. Just then, my phone rang. Another call? Noting the frequency of calls today, I glanced at the screen to see yet another unknown number.
Maybe it's just a sales call.
Suggested by my ex-mother-in-law, but feeling uneasy, I softly touched the call button and turned on the speaker. Hello? As I spoke softly, a loud, heavy-breathing voice came from the other end of the phone immediately.
Hey, you've moved, haven't you? Where are you now?
What? Hilda was the caller. This made both my ex-in-laws and me exchange looks. I wondered how Hilda knew my phone number, but then, seeing the guilty expressions on my in-laws' faces, I realized. They must have given Hilda my phone number, probably telling her to call me and demand money to repay their debts. What kind of nerve they had, this in-laws and Hilda, who calls her husband's ex-wife with nonchalance.
You should have informed me about the move. I realized I never got a wedding gift from you. Send me cash $1,000 immediately.
As expected, when Hilda demanded money, I let out a heavy sigh. A wedding gift? $1,000 in cash? It was absurd to talk about a wedding gift now, especially after my ex-husband had passed away. She took my husband and I got divorced, but I'm not a tolerant person to give a wedding gift to someone like her. I felt ridiculed and filled with anger. Suppressing the urge to smash my phone and careful not to wake April, I calmly told Hilda, I don't have a penny to give you. I know about the huge debt you have and that you stole valuable items from John's parents.
What? Why would you say that?
Hilda seemed shocked, and her agitation was clearly conveyed over the phone. I heard it from John's parents, who are right here next to me. They're the ones who gave you my number. They came asking me for money, just like you. Really, all of you are the worst. I lashed out at everyone present, including my ex-in-laws. Not only Hilda but also my ex-in-laws showed their outrage, exclaiming, "What?
This wouldn't have happened if she hadn't taken our money."
That's right, Sharon. This happened because you were cheated on.
Excuse me. Wait a minute. I'm the victim here, okay? John lied to me, saying he was the CEO, and I fell for his marriage fraud. You're the ones who raised your son to be a fraud.
Through the phone, war broke out. As I listened to each person's selfish assertions, my headache worsened. It's absurd that John's parents are brazenly causing a commotion in my house, and even more outrageous is the fact that I, the primary victim, am the one being blamed by them. I took a deep breath as they started fighting, feeling my head hurt. Let me say something. First, to John's father and mother, I am the person who was hurt by John. Isn't it wrong to ask such a person for money? I haven't even heard an apology from you.
We don't care about that. John is the one who did wrong.
Even in this situation, the ex-in-laws did not admit guilt. Their stubborn denial pushed me over the edge. Oh, is that so? Then I won't hold back. I'm going to report you to the police for attempting to defraud me with a fake funeral.
What?
At this, my ex-in-laws seemed shocked, visibly shrinking at the mention of police.
Please, not the police.
Hilda heard my ex-mother-in-law begging for her life on the other end of the phone, and she let out an indecent laugh. But I said to Hilda, "What are you laughing at?" "Of course, I'm planning to report you to the police as well."
No way.
Hilda's voice, filled with genuine surprise, resonated loudly from the other end of the phone.
Why should I have to deal with the police? I told you I'm the victim. I've been poor and struggling with money. When I met John through a dating app, he was all sweet talk, saying, "I'm the CEO, I can make your life easier." I didn't even know John was married. I was shocked to learn about you, his wife, and I even had to pay alimony. I was the one deceived. I'm the victim. Please don't sue me.
Hilda kept insisting she was the victim. Listening to her, I wondered why John was surrounded by such terrible people, making my head ache even more. Firstly, Hilda claims she didn't know John was married to me, but that's absolutely a lie. I caught her and John together on the day I returned home from giving birth to April, and when their affair was exposed, Hilda nonchalantly asked for a quick divorce. If she truly hadn't known about John being married, she would have been confused at that moment. It wouldn't be surprising if she were cursing John. But in reality, Hilda seemed prepared, as if she had already factored in my existence as John's wife and had a response plan. So, the idea that Hilda was deceived into dating John is implausible. She might have believed his claim of being the CEO, but even that was likely driven by her greed, making her responsible for her actions. I couldn't accept her telling me she was the victim. Worried that the commotion would wake April, I finally decided to put an end to it all with a decisive statement. Please stop lying. I won't be fooled by your tactics anymore. I will hang up now and call the police, so be prepared. And to you all, please never appear before me again. Goodbye. I first hung up the phone and then expelled the in-laws from my home. They pleaded until the end, saying, "Please, not a report," but I ignored them and immediately dialed 911. After a while, the police arrived, and I explained the entire situation to them. My ex-in-laws, for attempted fraud, and Hilda, suspected of fraud and theft, are likely to be arrested.
Mom, what happened?
April emerged from her room and asked me, noticing my sweaty state. Nothing, honey. How about we move again?
Are we moving out?
Yes. I found a lovely new house for us.
Yay.
Realizing that staying in the current home might lead to unexpected visits from my ex-in-laws and Hilda, I decided to move. I'm also planning to change my cell phone number. This should ensure that I never have to deal with my ex-in-laws and Hilda again. After completing the moving process, I settled into a new apartment near my workplace and learned new facts about ex-in-laws and Hilda. Although my ex-in-laws failed to defraud me, it appears they successfully swindled money from relatives and coworkers. Believing that those close to them would willingly give money, their deceitful methods filled me with disgust. Those who gave money initially might have done so out of goodwill, but they became suspicious due to the frequent requests for more funds. I was horrified to discover that my ex-in-laws were habitual fraudsters. Moving away to avoid further victimization seems to have been the right decision. Hilda's claim that her parents were in poverty was a lie. She had amassed debt from purchasing luxury brand items. To repay her debts, she worked night jobs, reportedly feigning affection to her clients to have them lavish her with expensive gifts and accessories. It might not have been problematic if her clients were voluntarily lavish with gifts, but one of them realized he was being scammed in a romance fraud and reported it to the police. Hilda's numerous crimes have been uncovered, making her crimes even more serious. I don't want to be related to people like my ex-in-laws and Hilda who try to scam people for money. I hope they reflect on their actions and atone for their crimes while under police custody. Since moving, I've been able to live peacefully. There have been no calls from my ex-in-laws or Hilda, and April and I are enjoying our days together. April has recently found a boy she likes at preschool, and she tells me about him in a lisping tone of voice. Listening to her innocent feelings brightens my mood as well. I hope these peaceful days will last, praying daily as I head to work again today.